evening and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Primetime Live here on Jess FM and Jess TV. I'm James Cousineau coming to you from the studios, of course, Jess TV, broadcasting from Lethbridge, Alberta. Welcome aboard, everyone. And for our new viewers, welcome as well. Tonight, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the unions, their history, and of course, their role within the film production industry and television production industry throughout Canada and the United States. The union has a very storied and rich background of bringing rights to the table for artists, whether it's actors, whether it is grips and lighting, sound, you name it. The unions have been instrumental in developing and shaping the industry in which we work today. Now, of course, with that, we will also be taking your phone calls. Don't forget that you are welcome to talk about any subject that you'd like within the film industry or otherwise. If you have a funny story, you're welcome to share it. If you have questions about the industry, you're welcome to ask it. If I don't know the answers, maybe some of our other viewers will be able to add in the chat room to answer it as well. I've been working within the industry for several decades now, so of course I have worked in various areas from locations to acting and also through to precision driving and transportation and others as well. So I have a very well evolved and rounded approach to the film industry. In addition to acting, of course, I'm involved in documentary productions and also other stock footage and production segments for different documentary shows such as the Hellfire Heroes on the Discovery Channel and others. But before we get into that, let's take a look at our local news stories that are impacting Lethbridge, Alberta, and of course around the world. Now, tonight, gridlock and frustration on the Whoop Up Drive. Yes, we have the latest on the city's plan to ease the commute. A major step in Alberta's battle with addiction. A new recovery community opens its doors in Calgary, Alberta. Excellent steps, and we'll discuss that a bit more. We'll also take a look at a social media stunt that turns dangerous. The shocking details of a catch a predator scheme in Airdrie, Alberta that led to a child's abduction and an eventual arrest that could have ended up so much worse. Again, grounded no more. Air Canada is back in the air after a crippling strike, but the fallout for thousands of travelers continue. There is an update from the airlines and how they are going to handle the refunds and the compensation for passengers who may have had to undergo much higher ticket prices at the last minute to replace their tickets or their travel plans with Air Canada. So we'll take a look at that. But before we get started, let's also thank our episode sponsor, once again, Carry Movers Limited of Western Canada, based in Surrey, British Columbia. They, of course, are Western Canada's favorite family-owned and operated moving company for several decades, moving you locally throughout Western Canada as well as long distance. You can find them at www.karymovers.com. Yes, that is back to the news now. It's been more than 2 weeks since we reported on the incident that started it all. On August the 6th, a flatbed trailer carrying heavy equipment struck the underside of the Whoop Up Drive bridge, causing significant damage to 4 of 6 main steel girders. This is a problem that we call normal everyday life in Western Canada. If you take a look at British Columbia and how how often their overpasses are struck, but it's not so common here in Lethbridge. But since then, lane closures have reduced speed limits, have created deadly bottlenecks, and of course, testing the patience of thousands of commuters every day. The public's frustration has become a significant test for City Hall, prompting two-pronged approach. Yes, they have responded by focusing both on public relations and practical engineering. Now, in his monthly column, the local mayor, of course, Blaine Huygen, acknowledged the frustration, stating that he has received many calls, emails, and texts concerning the bridge issue from local residents. While imploring drivers to respect safety signage and use the zipper merge, the city is a problem. Now, as of yesterday, that is August the 20th, the city has implemented what it calls peak hour lane changes. Crews are now alternating which side of the bridge has two lanes open and which has one. This is an effort to better match the flow of traffic during the morning and evening rushes. The city's infrastructure director says the goal is to alleviate congestion as people head into the downtown and out in the afternoon. Now, this adaptive strategy shows the city is attempting to actively manage the crisis, moving beyond simply asking for the public's patience. However, of course, the city's transportation network remains under strain. The situation was made worse this past Monday when a collision involving two semi trucks on the Highway 3 bridge deck caused further lane reductions and delays. This, of course, highlights the fragility of the city's key traffic arteries and amplified the public's sense of being trapped by traffic. This, again, is a major showcase of the hazards that, should there ever be a natural disaster, that would impact the region in terms of the gridlock that could be caused of people trying to evacuate the area should any of the main arteries be closed off. Now, city officials are stressing that despite the damage, the bridge remains safe, and they've had several bridge experts from across Canada. They've had them engaged and assuring them that the Whoop Up Bridge is structurally sound for motorists. They will continue to follow this story and keep us updated as we bring the information to you. Now, of course, we will also take a look next week at how effective that new the new lane change strategy, has become, and by then we'll have a good idea as to its impact, and hopefully the viewers can also let us know what they think. Now, let's take a look as the traffic woes may be grabbing the headlines. City Hall is also pointing to major positive developments for Lethbridge's future. The timing of these announcements appear to be part of a coordinated effort to showcase the civic confidence, their confidence, and counterbalance to the daily frustrations felt by commuters. Now, let's take a look at a major investment in this city's essential services. Yes, the construction is set to begin this month on a critical upgrade requirement to the Lethbridge Water Treatment Plant. The project is moving forward thanks to a $9.2 million grant from the province of Alberta. The first phase will see a new higher capacity clarifier built and an aging electronic system being replaced. This will ensure the plant can continue to provide safe drinking water even during unexpected problems. The full first phase is scheduled for completion in 2027. There's also significant good news on the community safety front. The latest data for 2024 is reporting a period of reduced crime overall. Yes, the Crime Severity Index, also known as the CSI, dropped nearly 19% from the previous year. This positive trend in public safety is being linked to the stable leadership within the Lethbridge Police Service. The Lethbridge Police Service and the Police Commission have recently announced that they've extended the contract of the current chief until August of 2029. Appointed in 2020, he has been credited with strengthening the community and community engagement, as well as implementing data-driven policing strategies. Something that you're seeing a lot of communities across Canada, across the US, and around the world that have been participating in this. It helps to create different pattern streams and real-time information for law enforcement to be able to better target their resources and make better use of manpower on the streets. Now, looking ahead, City Council has approved funding to complete and implement its economic development strategy. This move is designed to allow the city to move faster on economic initiatives and be less reliant on outside funding sources. Together, these developments paint a picture of a city administration focused on long-term progress for Lethbridge, even as it grapples with short-term challenges. And some of those challenges we discussed last week. And of course, you're welcome to put up in the chat board or call in later in the episode and discuss that as well. Even though we'll be moving on after the stories and the headlines, we'll move on to our in-depth report on the film industry part 3 of our series. Now, on a much lighter note, the city is in full celebration mode with the Whoop It Up days in full swing. Festivities kicked off in grand style on Tuesday with the annual Whoop Up Days parade through downtown. And I'm not thinking that they avoided the bridge. But that was followed by the fourth annual Mayor's Community Barbecue outside of City Hall, which drew large crowds for a free lunch and live entertainment. Yes, of course it would. Look at this fat guy. You think I'd miss a free lunch at City Hall? I'd be there for barbecue any day. Now, the event featured a full concert by local country star Trevor Panzak. Yes, he made a great appearance. It just wowed the audience, got them going on their feet. And a special appearance also was had by the 2025 Calgary Stampede Chuck Wagon champion, Chance Vigan. That sounds like a great day, but keep in mind that the fun continues. Yes, it is continuing on at the Lethbridge and District Exhibition Grounds through Sunday, August the 24th, with organizers encouraging everyone to explore the fantastic Agri Food Hub and the Trade Center. There's more for Lethbridge to celebrate. Local athlete Janae Shamachuk is bringing home a gold medal from the Canada Summer Games. She won in the women's hammer throw. That competition happened on Tuesday, and she launched it 58.8 meters, and that's 5 meters further than her closest competitor. Congratulations, and a way to go for Janae. Now, it's been a great week for the city, but still ahead. Major announcement from the provincial government in the fight against addiction. And later, the shocking story of a social media stunt that went horribly wrong and led to a child's abduction. With that, we'll continue right after this mention for our sponsor. Yes, our episode sponsor again is Carry Movers. If you are moving long distance throughout the Western provinces and territories, you can contact Carry Movers at KARYmovers.com. That's carrymovers.com. As well, they provide local moving services in the Metro Vancouver and Fraser Valley region as well. Now, let's take a look at the new front in addictions crisis. Yes, it is a big issue nationwide. But the Alberta government today announced and unveiled the latest piece of the strategy to combat the addiction crisis. Premier Danielle Smith was in Calgary to officially open the province's fourth addiction recovery community, a facility she says will bring hope and help to hundreds of Albertans. This is the new 74-bed facility in Southeast Calgary, designed to provide long-term, holistic treatment for men struggling with addiction. It's expected to serve up to 300 people a year and will be operated by the Last Door Recovery Society. The opening is a carefully managed event designed to showcase a signature government policy, and that is the government recovery model. This model focuses on providing treatment free of charge, with clients able to stay for up to 1 year. During that time, they receive services ranging from counseling and medical support to employment training and help finding housing. So again, you can see that it's a very holistic approach and one that feeds not only the recovery process, but also in terms of giving them a bit more stability and employability after treatment is complete. So again, great project, and we'll keep an eye on how that goes. Now, the goal, of course, is to reach clients to leave the recovery community drug-free, ready for work, or to begin training, and with a solid plan to get continued help from strong connections close to home. When these individuals, some people will argue about the cost of the facility and the length of the program. Let's keep in mind, though, that in a cost-based analysis, of course, you're going to be looking at the returns in tax dollars, in reduced health costs, and other areas that will definitely far outweigh the costs of the treatment programs. Now, the Calgary site is the fourth such facility to open in the province, joining existing recovery communities, the one here in Lethbridge, the one in Red Deer, and Gunn. It's a part of a $350 million plan to build a total of 11 facilities across Alberta by 2027. 5 of those are being developed in direct partnership with Indigenous communities, including the Blood Tribe and the Siksika Sorry, I mispronounced that, the Siksik Nation. And that will be perfect to coincide with the other programs that are being developed throughout Western Canada. So we're not just seeing one region push off their health issues or the recovery issues on another province. So again, it's working well in line with the goals of other provinces, especially those bordering Alberta. Now, the government model, which emphasizes abstinence based recovery, is a cornerstone of its social policy. While addictions experts have welcomed the addition of new publicly funded treatment spaces, many continue to stress the need for a comprehensive approach that also includes harm reduction services, highlighting the ongoing debate over the most effective way to address the crisis. And again, a very hot button topic that we could debate till darkness. But again, it is just a part of the process and the different programs that are out there. Now to a disturbing story out of Airdrie, Alberta. Yes, a social media stunt inspired by reality TV show turned into a real life change child abduction. Now, we've seen these To Catch a Predator programs, whether it's on Nightline or through other programs, as well as private citizens who have been doing them for social media content. This creates a very stark reality that there is a difference between a professionally organized sting operation to catch predators and that of youth just out to get social media likes. And again, we understand the problem in the communities, and it is one that needs a multi pronged approach. However, with that said, of course, the vigilante justice comes at a risk. Now, this particular incident began Monday evening. Airdrie RCMP say a group of at least 7 youths, yes, some as young as 12, devised a catch a predator style scheme. They arranged a meeting with a man through social media app Snapchat in the Cooper's Crossing neighborhood of Airdrie. Police say a 12-year-old boy then voluntarily got in the suspect's vehicle, intending for his friends to record the interaction on video. But the situation quickly spun out of control when the suspect deviated from their script and drove away with the 12-year-old boy inside. Now, the terrifying ordeal ended when the boy managed to escape from the vehicle after it stopped at a red light, and he immediately called 911. Police were able to locate the suspect's vehicle a short time later and attempted a traffic stop, but the driver fled south on Highway 2 towards Calgary. With the help of Calgary Police Service and the Hawks helicopter, the suspect was tracked to a residence in northeast Calgary and arrested. But let's remember that this could have turned out so much differently and so much worse. For parents out there, of course, we know that kids right now are fascinated and addicted to their cell phones, to their devices, and many of them want to become the next YouTube or TikTok star. The problem is that when they start to interact and create content in this dangerous scenario, it could have turned out so much worse. Now, in this case, a 37-year-old Zane Merchant of Calgary faces 9 charges, including abduction of a person under 14, kidnapping, sexual interference, and a flight from a peace officer. He was scheduled to make his first court appearance in Airdrie today, but that has been postponed for 1 week, and he will appear again on August the 28th. Now, police again are issuing a strong warning to the public, calling these actions amazingly dangerous. They say they do not only do these schemes risk violence and tragedy, but they can also produce what they call tainted evidence, making it much more difficult to prosecute an offender in court and paradoxically undermining the very justice that they were seeking. Once again, just a really, really bad idea. Now, in Kananaskis country, yes, the search continues for a 30-year-old Calgary man who went missing after a canoe capsized on the Barrier Lake this past Saturday. The 60-year-old man was found deceased at the scene, and a 56-year-old woman was taken to hospital with hypothermia. An RCMP underwater recovery expert has been searching the lake. Meanwhile, in Brooks, Alberta, yes, the RCMP are investigating after human remains were discovered in an alley near South Shore Drive yesterday evening. An autopsy was scheduled to be performed today to determine the person's identity and the cause of death. As we scoot along here, the political landscape in Alberta remains active. In Lethbridge this week, NDP leader Naheed Nenshi hosted a Better Together town hall to promote a message of unity. At the same time, organizers with the Alberta Forever movement were gathering signatures on a petition calling for a referendum of separation. Coming up after this quick announcement, we'll be looking at our national report. And Air Canada is flying again, but the turbulence for travelers is far from over. And don't forget to stick around as we finish off the headlines and head into our in depth talk about the film and television production industry and how the unions have shaped the workplace. Primetime Live is brought to you tonight by Carry Movers. With direct fleet moving services throughout Alberta and British Columbia, they handle local, long distance, and even specialized piano moves for your home or office. You can find them online at carrymovers.com. That's Kary movers.com. Now, moving on to the Air Canada aftermath. Our top national story tonight: Canada's largest airline is getting back to business, but the fallout from a crippling 3-day strike is still being felt by thousands of travelers across the country and around the world. After the grounding of the entire fleet for 3 days, Air Canada is slowly ramping up its flight schedule. The move comes after the airline and the union representing its 10,000 flight attendants finally reached an agreement, ending a labor dispute that caused chaos during the peak summer season. I actually traveled out to the airport and was watching to see how people were handling it. And I must say, I was quite impressed at how calm and well prepared people were arriving at the airport, and those who made other alternate arrangements within their either online or at the airport ahead of time. So, again, I think that went a long way as well. However, the strike threatened to impact 130,000 travelers a day in the days leading up to the walkout. The airline canceled hundreds of flights, many of them international, leaving passengers like Montreal's Alex LaRoche scrambling. He and his girlfriend had saved since Christmas for a European vacation, only to see their plans thrown into jeopardy. I've spoke with other travelers who went through the major expense, thousands upon thousands of dollars, to get last minute transfers of their flights, or I should say, replacement of their seats on other airlines. Once again, I mentioned in the top of the hour that Air Canada is looking to compensate for the additional costs. And if you go onto Air Canada's website, they have a new form that you can fill out to be compensated for the additional travel expenses that you incurred. What exactly that's going to entail, I'm not sure, but they do plan on trying to at least do a bit better than they are legally required in order to give some goodwill back to the passengers who have supported Air Canada through all of the decades of service. Now, the bitter contract fight dragged on for 8 months, highlighting a broader economic trend of workers demanding wages that keep pace with the high cost of living. The key sticking points were pay and the issue of unpaid work that flight attendants perform when the planes are on the tarmac. The Canadian Union of Public Employees, also known as CUPE, rejected the airline's final offer, which included a 38% increase in total compensation over 4 years. The union argued that an initial 8% rise in the first year was not enough to keep up with inflation, with some describing the wages as barely livable. Now, of course, they did find a resolution to the strike and to the impasse with the help of a mediator. Now, this as well had an impact on the travelers as it reduced the number of days of which the flights were delayed. But let's keep in mind that after an airplane has been sitting on the ground for more than 3 days, it also has to go through some safety checks as well for mechanics and other areas of the plane to ensure stability, reliability, and of course, at the end of the day, the safety of all air travelers. So it will be another week before they expect to be back at a normal schedule, and we'll watch and see how that works. Once again, if you were impacted by the Air Canada strike and incurred the additional expenses, whether it was because of inflated other airlines charging for last minute bookings, or otherwise, definitely take a look at the Air Canada website and the new form that they have on there. Now, from domestic travel to international relations, the federal government is navigating an increasingly complex global landscape. Today, Foreign Affairs Minister addressed the future of the country's most important relationship, the one with the United States. Now, as we look at this story, keep in mind that there was not a whole lot of information that came out from Anita Anand's office about her discussions that she held in the US. And of course, we will be watching for more details there. However, the Prime Minister's office, Mark Carney's, said that he did also have a telephone call that was very productive and positive with Donald Trump today. The discussion comes as that government seems to be reevaluating key aspects of its military and strategic alignment with its southern neighbors. Now, Prime Minister Carney's government recently announced a review of the $27 billion deal to purchase more than 80 F 35 fighter jets. The review has opened the possibility that after an initial delivery of the American made jets, Canada could look to other countries to supply its Air Force. By all means, our audience out there, we encourage you to leave your comments or use the chat option to let us know what you think of that. Now, the move is a significant departure from the previous government's position. The former Defense Minister, Anita Anand, who is now working with the foreign negotiating team. We're talking with counterparts in the US, and we hope that she's making some success in issues such as Gaza and, of course, Ukraine, which she reportedly spoke with Rubio today about those issues. So we'll see how that works. We also have to keep in mind that we want to keep a well thought out plan. And that is, of course, essential for maintaining our interoperability with our NATO allies. Now, our foreign policy focus will extend to the war in Ukraine, as I just said, and the foreign minister confirmed that Canada is working with NATO allies to provide long term security options and guarantees for Ukraine. That is one of the concerns, of course, with any negotiated settlement. That there was also in the past the Budapest Memorandum that seems to be not really worth the paper it's written on in the way that it has been treated by the US and really just overlooked altogether when it comes to that responsibility that lies within, of course, the US, Russia, and others that was in exchange for the reduction and removal of the nuclear weapons from Ukraine many years ago. Now, of course, a monster hurricane has also taken aim at the U.S. East Coast, and a major legal victory for Donald Trump, as well as the escalating violence in the Middle East. But again, we are running a bit behind here, so we are going to forego the rest of the news stories this hour. And we are going to move on to our top story, or our deep dive story, sorry. And this way we can just keep the show rolling. Yes, it is lights, camera, and action at the North America Story Engine. The film industry, of course, it is a multi-billion-dollar machine that just keeps providing jobs and GDP growth for a lot of economies. This includes whether it is in Lethbridge and the beautiful Wolf Up Bridge that may be a little cosmetically altered right now, but will probably appear in more productions down the road as it has in the last few years. So again, great news when we look at the film industry and its impact. But it is also facing a challenging period, and that's where not only the industry has to adapt and work together with producers, with all of these different companies across the globe, because it's not just one little company or one little idea that's just taken and developed by one person. It's actually a very large team and a machine that comes together for each individual production. They estimate that in Canada and the US, 92% of the companies employing less than 10 people. So again, it just shows how much small business plays a role in the overall productions. Now, when you look at that, of course, from the silver screen to the smartphone in your pocket, the stories that shape our world are born from an industry of incredible scale and complexity. It's an industry of our dreams, yes, but it also is a colossal economic engine, a continental powerhouse stretching from the heart of Hollywood, California to the bustling sets of Hollywood North right here in Canada. And of course, now they're dubbing down in Georgia, they are dubbing Hollywood South. So it shows the diversity of the different regions in which are trying to attract the different productions. But tonight we go behind the scenes. We're going to explore the staggering economic impact of film and television, not just globally, but right here in our backyard in Alberta. We'll also demystify a complex machine of production, revealing the army of artists and technicians that it takes to bring a single frame to life, and how the unions have really played a role. And basically, it's almost a hidden history, the story of how they have come together with the workers in the industry, fought landmark battles for rights and benefits, battles that created a safer, fair workplace, not just for themselves, but millions of others in other industries, far beyond the studio gates and far beyond the creative landscape. So let's take a look at the story of the North American Story Factory. And if you wish to join the conversation, ladies and gentlemen, of course, you can use our chat option at any time. Available through North America. And the first one is 778-980-4635. And forgive me for a quick moment as I pull up our WhatsApp number because I don't use it regularly. I always forget what it is. But again, you can dial locally here in Lethbridge and in Alberta to phone number 368-997-6741. And you can also call in on WhatsApp on that same number as well. So let's make sure that our WhatsApp is open here as we can talk about the unions, the history, the film industry. We can talk about anything you want to talk about if you wish to call in. Feel free to do so. And I'm just looking, of course, like anybody else. I've got a million apps on my phone. So I'm going to open that up right here. We've got a message here already that says, hello. Misspelled my name, but that's okay. I'm not sure who it was from. They didn't include a name, just a phone number. And they go by the moniker Let Love Lead. Great advice. But let's move back here. Yes, it all starts with a story, but that story is powered by an economic engine of almost unimaginable size. The American film and television industry is the global benchmark, a titan that supports a staggering 2.32 million jobs across the United States annually. It pays out over $229 billion in wages, a figure that underscores its role as a major private sector employer. But the image of new monolithic studios, that really belies the truth and the nature behind the ecosystem. As the industry is comprised, as I said, of many businesses, and it's actually more than 122,000 businesses, and remarkably, 92% of them, as I said, are small enterprises employing fewer than 10 people. Now, this, of course, is ranging from specialized prop houses and catering companies to independent visual effects artists and sound editors. It's a vast network of small businesses that form the bedrock of production. That is also why many people understand that the film industry is there in their community or in their province, their state, and they look at it and say, well, why are they on strike again? Well, if there is, and I'm not saying anybody's on strike. I'm just saying, as an example, that people look at it as a whole industry. They don't understand the complexities of all of the different roles and how many people it actually takes to make a production happen. Now, Black Panther, for example, that involved over 3,100 local workers in Georgia who took home more than, what was it, $26.5 million in wages. Or the Oscar nominated films The Post and The Greatest Showman, which together contributed 108 million to New York's local economy. Let's not forget that The Last of Us season 1 here in Alberta was filmed and brought in over $130 million to the local economy and the province's GDP. Huge, huge numbers. And let's also mention that that was the largest production budget ever to hit Alberta and quite possibly Canada as well. So, again, just an amazing, amazing amount of money and employment that goes along with the industry. Now, when a major film or television series shoots on location, the economic ripple effect is immediate and profound. Now, let's remember that it could bring in up to $1.3 million a day. And that is just phenomenal. So again, it shows the impact it can have on local communities. And no wonder why there are so many communities that are battling for those productions. Now, the economic power isn't confined by national borders. A lot of American storytelling is one of the nation's most valuable cultural and economic exports. They account for $22.6 billion in annual exports and registered a positive trade balance with nearly every country in the world. So let Donald Trump sit on that for a bit and understand that Hollywood is doing well when it comes to Hollywood as a theme, but not Hollywood in itself as a studio city. Now, of course, the decades that Hollywood was synonymous with California, but the industry's immense economic value has gone unnoticed by state governments until recent. They're now looking at a competitive landscape to bring a lot of film production back to Los Angeles. And that's a part of the strategic financial policy that when you look at states like Louisiana, Georgia, of course, New Mexico, they've understood the value of investing in the film and television production industry and really offered aggressive incentives and tax programs that bring the rebates back to the production companies in order to attract those high paying jobs. With that said, of course, you've got to look at California. As I said, they are just working their asses off to bring production back to the greater LA area. And something interesting is that Film LA represents a lot of the film industry to help with everything from permitting to locations and just so much more and promote LA as a filming destination. For decades, they have also represented the city of Santa Monica, which is just an amazing coastal city there. If you're not familiar with the layout of California, you can find the Santa Monica Pier and Pacific Palisades Park and so many other spots there. But Santa Monica is actually at the end of this month opening up their own film office. It'll be the Santa Monica Film Office there, and it is a change from how they've done things in the past, just contracting that out to Film LA or LA Films. So again, it's seeing a transition in small areas as well as major metropolises like LA and Santa Monica, Toronto, New York, Vancouver. So again, it is all over the map there, but it just again emphasizes the importance of those dollars coming into the local economy. Now, when we look at how this has led to the decentralization of the industry, it's created high wage, high skilled jobs in regions far from the traditional epicenter of power and production. The mobility of film production makes it a powerful tool for economic development. And that is another issue that is at concern now is that with the international co-productions and productions that may be filming on location in Ireland or in Budapest or in Vancouver, whether or not there's going to be a change in direction tomorrow by the Trump administration. And that has, of course, been a concern of a lot of industries as to how that's shaping up. Once again, it is the role of the different film offices to represent their regions, but at the same time, it's a real concern when you create that instability within the industry when we're so codependent on other regions. It definitely is a concern here in Canada. It's a concern in the UK, where they've seen production levels greatly reduced over the last several years. And of course, now it's become an even greater issue. Another one that impacts production in the US for the main studios and in Canada, of course, is foreign investment in productions. With the instability of the global economic situation and the picture right now, it is raising concerns of foreign investors to put the money into major productions. A lot of people may not realize how much the film and production industry is reliant on foreign investments for productions, whether it's money coming in from China, from the Middle East, or elsewhere. It really does play a big part of the total engine as it comes together and fueling the industry. Now let's move on to talk about the industry in terms of how the unions have played a major role. Now, there are so many different unions within the film and television production industry, whether that is SAG, AFTRA, the Union of BC Performers, uh, the Directors Guild of Canada, the Directors Guild of America, the Writers Guild of America, the Writers Guild of Canada, IATSE, the Teamsters. There's just so many different unions that really have to keep an eye on what the pulse of the industry is in order to make sure that they are fairly representing their client base or their membership. Now you can go back into history of Hollywood, and you can see where things such as fair wages and residuals were not an issue back in the day before the unions. It was as the studio dictated. There were people that were very, very well known actors, A-list actors, who would be working 25 hours straight that didn't get the long breaks in between, or not long breaks, but sufficient breaks in between production days. And therefore, it led to a lot of health issues, a lot of substance use to try to maintain that schedule and that work demand, as well as other issues such as the residual. When the real concerns were addressed, and again, right now we're looking at AI, we're looking at the transition to online streaming platforms, we're looking at this. But keep in mind that there was a time when the transition was going from, of course, studios or radio programs to television. Yes, it seems insane to think about that in today's context, but there were, of course, people that were worried about the television killing the film industry and the theatrical releases and what they called back then the talkies. So again, it didn't, but it found a new way to generate revenue for the theatrical releases or for the movie studios. And that was in the way that the movie studios were able to now resell the airing rights or license their programs, the motion pictures and other programs, to the television networks, creating a whole new revenue stream for the productions. Just like they did with the VHS tape and the Betamax or pay per view, and now streaming platforms and that. So again, there are drawbacks to the evolution of technology, but again, that's where the unions play a big role. Now, again, back in the 60s, it was an issue about, as I said, the long hours, the overtime, the changing schedules, and the lack of remuneration for the actors, for the writers, for the crew, and everybody else that was involved in the creative process. They were not getting any part of the added value or the increased revenue when the programs went to television and were licensed over and over to other networks over periods of time. And that's where the union came in and started to fight for the residual program. They were able to make that happen. And it was a benchmark and a landmark strike that took place in the 1960s that allowed that to happen. So again, sometimes it's the organized and focused job action that wins out, and that has been the role of the unions within the industry to make sure that things such as health and safety are respected on work sites, whether it's in a studio or on locations. And you see how that changes the whole industry. Let's also keep in mind that, as I said, we were going to go through all of the different unions and kind of give an overview. But again, there's so many of them that it is really hard to bring all of those to really define what they are, but I'll give you a couple of the main ones. Now, IOTC is the International Association of Theatrical and Screen Entertainers, I believe, and I probably got that wrong. Maybe it's electric, I don't know. But in any event, again, they are more on the production and technical side. You have AFTRA, you have SAG, which is the Screen Actors Guild, the Actors Unions, and that again for the Canadian equivalent is ACTRA, as well as the Union of BC Performers, ACTRA East, and others. So again, they represent a lot of the performers in that regard. You have the Directors Guild of Canada or the Directors Guild of America, who represent the directors, but also can represent other parts of the industry, such as the assistant directors or associate directors, producers, and others. So there's a wide range. You have the Teamsters Union. Of course, we all know who the Teamsters are. They are responsible for the transportation and transport departments, whether that comes in line with the shuttles for background or the vehicles that transport the cast, as well as shuttling crew and so much more, as well as set vehicles and the work trucks and circus and all of that. So again, the Teamsters also play a major role in the productions. Then you have all of the other areas: the hair and makeup artists, uh, the gaffers, the electricians. There's just so many different unions and so many different roles that if you have specific questions about any of them, by all means, put it in the chat. Or, of course, don't be shy that you can also feel free to call in on the various lines or through WhatsApp. So, again, we always encourage you to participate. When you look at the unions again, though, they have been really working to create a better environment for all. You can look at whether it's the Me Too movement or even back in the 60s and 70s when people were talking about what used to happen to them. And there are stories about James Dean being exploited, we'll say, in polite terms, but we know what used to go on there. But people that you would not realize, Marlon Brando was very public about his involvement, and Rock Hudson, never saying no when the studios would have him at fundraising parties to raise money for productions from underground sources. And again, it was through a real slimy and despicable activity that was just a norm in Hollywood, which is really pathetic that we saw that happening in the news reports and how it was touched on back in the 70s and the 60s. And yet here we were in the 2000s and 2010s seeing the same concerns in the industry. And again, that is where the industry and the unions have really taken steps to try and advance the safety and security of all and to raise awareness and education for those entering the industry. If you go to your union and you check out the website or through your manuals and your collective agreements, all of that, there are now provisions for safety, for harassment, for all of these issues that had been brushed under the carpet for so long. But again, that is a big part of the union solidarity coming together to protect the workers. And it also brought a lot of the spill off because as the film industry, being such a public union force and organized labor force, is they were able to influence patterns of negotiations and agreements that were really taken almost per se, or sorry, word for word, and transferred to other industries to protect workers there. So again, it's always been seen as a very visual representation of the workforce, the unions. And that has created all of these different safety programs, and hopefully we see that continue. I know that the Union of BC Performers, where I'm a member, as well as the Canadian Freelance Guild, the Commercial Workers Association of Canada, which is the media union here in Canada. So I'm a member of a lot of different areas. The Western Canada Commercial Production Association. So again, there's so many different roles of different associations versus different unions versus, but everybody is coming from the same angle that it is essential for workplace safety that would never have happened without the work of IOTC, without the work of, ACTRA, AFTRA, SAG, so many others, So again, thanks to all of the people that work in our industry and the union. Now, of course, there are going to be people that say, there's not enough representation of the membership when it comes to unions. Like any organized, any organization, you're going to have, ways that it can be improved. So make sure that you reach out to your union if you do have suggestions how to make it better for the membership. But remember, nothing's perfect. It's always evolving. So don't be shy to get involved in your unions either. There's always committees and such. But behind those unions or behind the below the line, there's artists and technicians, hundreds of specialists who work essentially drives the industry as well. And when we think of film, we often think of the names on the poster. These are the what they call the above the line talents. And the producers who secure the funding, the screenwriter who creates the story, the director who shapes the creative vision, and of course the principal actors who bring the characters to life. Now, when I'm in a role, I'm usually background or just a day call, and my job is not to be really noticed on screen. My job is to be a part of the atmosphere or to be a part of the background to make the scene come together and supporting the main actors or the main story. And it's just to be a part of a huge team in the background that you don't really pay attention to, and that's what we do. But again, those are considered below the line. So again, those are technicians, artists, hundreds of specialists who work essentially drives the industry, but again, is all of the people that are invisible to the audience. They are organized into highly specialized departments, and each has a critical cog in the production machine. So, of course, production management team, that's led by the unit production manager, and that's the logistical brain, the managing of budgets, schedules, daily operations. The cameras and lighting departments under the director of photography are the visual artists, the gaffer, the chief lighting technician, the grips, those who build the camera supports, literally paint the film with light and shadow, and that is a magical moment that gives a real ambiance or a certain emotional flair to a production. And whether that is to provide an adrenaline rush through a good car scene or explosion, or just looking at the right lighting for a hallmark, whatever the program may be. But again, it's about creating that romantic or that sad moment, and lighting and that can play a huge role in that atmosphere and that mood. So again, as they are essentially painting the film with the light and shadow to give you that experience when you watch the program, when you see it on the big screen, whatever the case is. Now, of course, you also have the art department, which plays a major role as well. They are guided by production designer, and they build the entire world of the film from the ground up, from the sprawling sets to the smallest hand props. And I can tell you some of the amazing, amazing work that I've seen production designers in the art department create. Unbelievable. They can transform a plain room into something just out of reality and out of context from anything that you've seen before or you can relate to that really drives a real theme of the movie or the television series. So again, the work of the art department is so, so important. And again, that could be the smallest hand props that they are working with. And then you have the sound department that captures every whisper of dialogue, while the post production teams, the editors, the colorists, the visual effects, the artists are there, whether it is Foley artists or otherwise, they assemble and polish every element of the final seamless experience. They spend just countless hours staring at a screen, listening to the most minute sounds to make sure that it is perfect. And again, when you combine the sound, when you combine the composition of the music, when you combine that with the lighting, I mean, all of these things come together to give you that experience. And again, it can make or break a production. Poor sound, poor lighting can really make a production go from a multi-billion-dollar blockbuster, and that might be exaggerating a bit, but to give the example, from that to a complete box office failure. So again, it is the essential part of all of these unions and all of these workers coming together to make it all work. Now, we know that there have been unions in the past where there has been questions, and that doesn't, whether you look at, the Jimmy Hoffa mysteries, or, the connections to the mob and organized crime, and that was no different in the film industry. There was a connection to whether it was studios or whether it was unions. There was some connection to organized crime. There was some connection to the mob and to others, and even crooked politicians. I know, hard to believe, crooked politicians. But if you go back through the 1920s, 1930s, you can look at even beyond that, or more recent than that, you can find a lot of that. But again, it's the actors that have been working long hours on studio backlots or on location. All of those other members of the art department, the lighting, all of that, that has really shaped all of those early union meetings and the picket lines that have got us where we are today. So again, that's the importance of the unions within our industry, to protect the workers' rights and to make sure that we are compensated fairly. Now, to give that a more recent spin, or more recent avenue for people to relate to, we can look at how the AI is generating a lot of buzz within the industry, but our unions are working to make sure that it is ethically used, that it's responsibly used, and that it is well to give it basic terms, that everybody's compensated fairly, that they don't just scan images of background actors and use them in perpetuity and exploit that likeness. Now, provinces like British Columbia have already put in laws that protect the rights of the workers and anyone in terms of owning the rights to their own personal likeness. This is something that is growing within the industry, within contracts, negotiations, and agreements. But it's also something that's taking place that the film industry is leading the way on. That's having a spillover effect into other parts of society as well. And that is how workers are getting protections from AI, in the term that it doesn't get rolled out to exploit workers, or to replace workers altogether when there is, a need still. I'm not saying that AI is bad. I think that it is a tool in a toolbox of many tools. And again, it can help to bring things together, but it shouldn't be used as a replacement for anything. Now, as we look at the history, as I said, the Screen Actors Guild, for example, was founded in 1933 by a small group of actors determined to fight for better working conditions. The Directors Guild of America was formed in 1936 to protect the economic and creative rights of directors. When you look at the Writers Guild of America, that grew out of an earlier organization from the 1920s, and that was fighting for fair credit and minimum pay and representation of the vast below the line crew of technicians and craftspeople. Is the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, and that's what IATSE stands for. Got I got tongue tied on it earlier, but regardless, that is what it's for. And they are the way that it works in the industry. But let's remember that IATSE is actually one of the oldest of all of the unions, and that was founded back in 1893. And that was originally for stagehands, because, of course, you weren't looking at the television industry back in 1893. But together, these guilds and unions have fundamentally reshaped the minimum wages, the safer workplaces, and fair standards. And they still have work to do as we evolve. As I said, AI is a big concern these days. So again, you can look at, being by the late 50s, the new technology was changing everything. And as I said, that was television. The studios were seeing a new lucrative market. They began selling the vast libraries of old films to TV networks. The movies were a hit, but the actors who starred in them received nothing. And that is, of course, a new life for that project. So, therefore, new life had to be given to the compensation to those that made it. So again, it just became one of the major flashpoints for one of the most important labor disputes in American history. Not just film history, but American history. And that was on March the 7th of 1960. The Screen Actors Guild, led then by the president, yes, Ronald Reagan. And when I say president, he was the president of the Screen Actors Guild, but later went on to become president of the United States of America. But they went on strike, demanding that its members be compensated for the reuse of that work. After a difficult 6-week work stoppage, a historic compromise was reached, and the Guild agreed to waive payments for films made before 1960. But in return, the studios agreed to two revolutionary provisions that would change the nature of creative work forever. First, as I said, they agreed to pay residuals, which was a percentage of the revenue they earned every time a film made in 1960 or after was broadcasted on television or other entities. Now, this established a vital principle that creators should get a share of the long term commercial success of their work. Fair enough. Now, second, the studios made a one time payment of $2.25 million to establish the industry's first ever pension and health plan for actors. That again was a major win back in the 1960s. So, again, it was also the lead for other unions to start demanding the same type of treatment, and that is pensions, that is healthcare, multi-employer plans, because of course people are not working for the same studio or the same employer constantly. So that's where the unions were instrumental in making these multi-employer plans work. Again, under the model, every studio that hires a union member pays contributions into a central fund that's administered by the unions. So it just shows the importance of unions, the importance of the film and television industry, and much more. But on that note, we're going to wrap up tonight's show, and I hope that that taught you a bit more about how important the unions are to the film and production industry, but also how important all of the behind the scenes people that are required to come together to make productions work. Now, I'll leave you with this last story. Years ago, back in the mid 90s, I guess it was. I was driving a bus for a scouting. We were scouting locations. We were up in a place called Porto Cove, British Columbia. That's along the Sea to Sky Highway between Vancouver and Whistler along the Howe Sound. Beautiful, picturesque, just amazing, amazing place. But as you go into Porto Cove, in the area that we were going to in the old rail district or the old railway area, we had to go across the train tracks and then down. It's all gravel road, beautiful, right on the ocean there. We're right on the Sound. And as I went over the railway tracks, I was driving the bus for the team that we were scouting locations with. And this was for a movie with Leslie Nielsen. It was around the time of Mr. Magoo, but it wasn't. We went up to Grouse Mountain for that one. Wrongfully Accused, I believe it was, but it was a parody of various movies. So on that scene, it was to be set on the railway where the train derails in The Fugitive, but of course, this being the spoof of it. But yeah, so as we crossed the train tracks, one of the spikes was unwedged, and it actually ripped the sidewall of the tire on the bus. So we were stuck there for hours waiting for Cal Tire or whatever the local mobile service was to come and change the tire. But let me tell you, just how those little bits of flexibility where something like that happens in the film industry. Now, had that have been on a production set, that could have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars for a delay like that. But again, it's about having a plan and knowing that you are able to work within it. So contingencies are always important. But again, just a funny story that that was on. I believe it was Wrongfully Accused. I'm pretty sure that was the name of the film. But again, folks, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Primetime Live with James. If you have any comments about the news stories we covered or about the film industry, by all means. This week we were to have a few special guests on board, but due to scheduling conflicts between every Thursday night on Jess FM and Jess TV, I'm James Cousineau coming to you for Primetime Live. Thanks, everyone. Take care and stay safe out there.